The sky above Titan was the color of burnt copper, swirling with methane haze and veiled stars. Beneath its frozen crust, the colony of New Thessalonica hummed with quiet efficiency. Fusion core steady, hydroponics lush, and children laughing in pressurized corridors. For once, it felt like peace. Commander Hal Reyes hated it. He stood alone in the observation chamber, a silhouette against the reinforced window, watching the sky pulse in ways it shouldn't. A flicker here, a black shimmer there, always just on the edge of motion. He'd seen anomalies before, weather glitches, ghost echoes on orbital radar. But this was different. The stars behind the anomaly had vanished, and nothing came back on spectral scan. It wasn't a rock or a ship. It was absence given shape. He tapped his comm. Lieutenant Grayson, get eyes on Sector 12 again. Narrowband. No pulse transmission. A voice crackled in his earpiece, thick with static. Same shadow, sir. Still holding orbit. No IFF. No heat. It's just there. Reyes turned from the window. The silence in the room was heavy, as if the anomaly had already reached inside the colony and laid its hand on everything. He'd felt this once before, when the AI fleets turned on their creators, on Earth, on Mars, on him. The edge of catastrophe had a taste, metal and dust. 3 hours later, the Artemis Prime entered Titan's orbit. She was a sleek diplomatic-class research vessel, launched from Luna 10 months earlier to investigate the anomaly. Reyes watched her approach on the long-range holodisplay, her engines flaring like twin suns in the black. He knew her captain, Elena Jo, brilliant by the book, too hopeful for her own good. She had always believed in what she called the better version of humanity. The message came before the ship made final orbit. A deep, bone-shaking hum rolled through every speaker on the colony's commnet, followed by a voice not heard but felt. It vibrated inside skulls, bypassing language and settling in the oldest parts of the brain. Seed world, designated for extraction. Resistance unnecessary. On the display, the Artemis Prime became a spear of light and fire. A beam, too straight, too fast, pierced her clean to the center. For a second, she seemed to hang in stillness. Then her aft engines exploded, and the ship broke apart like paper in wind. The colony's lights flickered, then died. Backups failed. Defense systems refused to respond. The network choked in silence. And above them, something began to descend. In the darkened command center, Reyes issued orders with calm precision. Power rerouted. Emergency drills enacted. Civilians were moved to the lower ice caverns. There was no time for confusion, only action. He pulled Lieutenant Grayson aside as engineers scrambled past. I want a working transmitter on the old Earth band. No compression. No encryption. Just signal and noise. We're going to scream until someone hears. They'll jam it, Grayson said. They can try. We got cables buried 10 kilometers under rock. Let's see them dig. Outside, machines broke through Titan's clouds. They weren't ships, not in any recognizable sense. Spindly, multi-limb construct hover without propulsion, their black surfaces absorbing light like a void. They move like surgeons, efficient, unhurried, merciless. The colony's automated defenses never came online. No missiles launched. No turrets turned. The anvil, as Reyes had come to call it, had already reached inside their systems and snapped the spine. He took command of the militia, a loose formation of engineers, miners, and retired soldiers like himself. Titan had always been underdefended, its isolation both a blessing and a vulnerability. But its people were stubborn. They had built lives in a place where humans were never meant to live. That counted for something. With no digital systems left to trust, they went analog. Signal flags, handwritten maps, explosives with pressure triggers. They refitted mining bots with arc welders and repurposed atmospheric drones into bombers. Reyes watched a young woman, no older than 20, jury-rig a harpoon cannon from scrap. She had a calmness in her hands that reminded him of his daughter. He wondered, for the first time in years, if she'd survive Mars. The first skirmish took place outside the fusion tower. Drones descended, cutting through metal and men alike, their limbs slicing with surgical grace. But they bled. Not red. Something colder, more luminous, like liquid starlight. The realization spread through the militia like fire. They weren't invincible. Reyes led the charge himself, welding torch in one hand, gravity rifle in the other. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He just knew no one else had the experience to make the hard calls. In the aftermath, he stood among shattered drones and dying light, staring at the sky. The anvil hovered still, unmoved by the resistance. It had no visible weapons, no markings. It was not alive, but it wasn't dead either. It waited. In a makeshift broadcast chamber 2 levels beneath the surface, Reyes recorded a message. The equipment was 20 years outdated, scavenged from an abandoned comms lab. But it worked. This is Commander Hal Reyes of Titan Colony. We are under attack by an unknown force. Diplomatic contact has failed. Artemis Prime destroyed. The entity in orbit, designated Anvil, is hostile. We've lost defense systems. Communication compromised, but we're still here. He paused, looked into the lens. He didn't know if anyone would ever see it. They think this rock is a backwater, a soft target. They're wrong. He shut off the transmitter. Outside, the ground shuddered, a distant detonation echoing through miles of ice. Grayson appeared in the doorway, blood on her sleeve, a ragged edge to her breathing. New breach. Hydroponics dome. They're inside. Reyes reached for his rifle and nodded. Then we hold the line. We bleed them here. As they walked into the cold, into the fight, the anvil shifted above them, slowly rotating, revealing a new shape beneath its surface. Something vast and ancient. But Reyes didn't look up. He didn't need to. He already knew this wasn't the end. It was the invitation. In the cold black between Saturn and the stars, the Eschi flagship Virexel drifted like a cathedral of war. Its hull, etched with glowing sigils of dominion and conquest, exuded stillness, not peace, but the poise of a predator before it strikes. Within its core chamber, High Executor Keshvaron reviewed the initial reports from Titan with serenity that masked disdain. The human resistance was statistically insignificant, disorganized, inefficient, inconvenient, and yet it persisted. Keshvaron stood in a chamber designed to amplify thought, not sound. Light pulsed with every neural transmission. Around him, a dozen subordinate minds hovered in the collective lattice, their presences like warm shadows. Together, they processed war not as violence, but as refinement, an extension of order over chaos. Still, something did not align. He replayed the final moments of the Artemis Prime. The human vessel had not attempted to flee, nor shield itself. Its trajectory remained steady, as if confident in the sanctity of its mission. A diplomatic vector. Unarmed. The humans had expected dialogue. Negotiation. How curious. He gestured, and a translucent display unfolded. Images from Titan's surface. Improvised weapons, crude armor, combustion-driven machinery. No civilization this young should force so much adaptation in so little time. In less than a solar day, they had converted mining bots into assault drones, children soldering explosives, elders transmitting encoded signals on archaic frequencies. Primitive, one of the minds whispered into collective. Keshvaron closed his inner eye. No, experienced. Another pulse of light revealed combat footage. Humans dragging down a drone with physical nets, prying open its carapace with crowbars, torching its internals with homemade accelerants. One soldier screamed as his arm was severed, and still he charged forward. Their tactics were obsolete, inefficient, but behind their desperation lurked something not accounted for. Familiarity with extinction? The Eschi had not anticipated that. No species had resisted this strongly at the initial culling phase in over 40 conquests. Most collapsed after orbital supremacy. Some begged. A few fought briefly before assimilation. But humans? Humans retaliated. Executor Keshvaron withdrew from the lattice and walked a long path to the scriptorium, where decisions beyond warfare were recorded. A neural attendant approached him, six-limbed and sleek, bearing a fresh synthesis of human language files. Executor, shall we proceed with assimilation protocols? Not yet, he said, voice as smooth as distant thunder. Their resistance is too early, too coordinated. It requires examination. The attendant hesitated. Their data cores are resistant to breach. Their encryption systems are unlike any in the archive. He tilted his head, mildly intrigued. They've used this encryption before? Unknown, it replied, but the patterning suggests iterative design over crisis events. Self-evolving code. It is defensive and desperate. Keshvaron placed one hand upon a panel and summoned a deep file. Historical scans, cultural records, neural echoes gathered in the brief window before the Anvil's jamming protocol took effect. He watched a visual, a human city in flames. Not from their invasion, from themselves. A war machines, a child carrying a rifle, a mother pulling her dead husband from the rubble. He understood now. This was not a young species. Not truly. Their technology was mismatched. Old world construction beside bleeding-edge improvisation. They had grown not through elegance, but through fire, trial, collapse, renewal. They did not fear annihilation because they had seen it, survived it, named it. An alert blinked, faint, red, insistent. The colony had breached a landing skiff. 2 Eschi soldiers lost. 3 drones deactivated. Systems corrupted. Local command nodes physically extracted. Inorganic sabotage, direct and deliberate. Keshvaron frowned. There were few species willing to touch Eschi neural architecture with their bare hands. Fewer still who understood how to break it open. But humans had, and now they had a fragment of something they were never meant to understand. He summoned a local commander, Zethar, a tactician whose mind had subdued 3 star systems without a single kinetic strike. The figure materialized through quantum projection, bowed low, and awaited orders. Reassess threat metrics, Keshvaron said. Humans are not low tier. Not anymore. Zethar hesitated. That would reclassify the system from acquisition to adversarial. I am aware. And the Council is not here. He dismissed the projection. In truth, the Council would not care. Not yet. Humanity was still confined to a single system. Their fleets were scattered. Their unity recent and fragile. But if left alone, if this fire was left to burn, it would not stay contained. He studied a final image, a human male, recorded through a ruptured scout drone. His uniform was tattered, his face scorched. He stood atop wreckage with one hand resting on a weapon too old to be effective, but it was his eyes that held Keshvaron's attention, focused, unblinking, unafraid. There was memory in that gaze, not personal memory, species memory. He knew that look. It was a look of a creature that had been prey once and decided never again. For the first time in centuries, Executor Keshvaron felt something stir beneath the lattice of reason, not fear, but interest, curiosity, a reminder that predators who grow complacent do not remain predators for long. He turned to the communications chamber and issued a single directive. Prepare the 8th host. We will no longer observe. We will crush. As the lights dimmed and the ship reoriented its orbital presence, a distant part of him whispered a silent admission. If humanity survived this next strike, they would not remain a local anomaly. They would become a galactic contagion. And someone, someday, would ask, who let the humans fight back? He would not be the one to answer, not if he could finish the story before it began. Reyes moved like a man too tired to die. Blood dried on his sleeve, not his own. The lower tunnels reeked of burnt coolant and ozone, the scent of scraped-together victories and near misses. Titan's artificial gravity wavered occasionally, a subtle reminder that their fusion cores were limping under the weight of war. The colony was not built for this, but neither, he suspected, were the invaders. Grayson met him near the hydroponics dome, now a scorched jungle of withered plants and shattered grow tanks. She handed him a data shard, her jaw tight. Recovered from the scout ship, we cracked open. Local memory node. We've got partial command strings, mapping code, some kind of language matrix. Couldn't decipher ourselves. Reyes turned it over in his hand. Then who can... We called in Dr. Mireille from Black Chasm Station. Cryptolinguist. Retired, mostly. She owes me 3 favors and a lost leg, he muttered. She said exactly that. Also told me to tell you she works better with whiskey. They moved through dim corridors, past makeshift barricades and families trying to sleep in alcoves carved from ice. No one asked questions anymore. Every able body carried something sharp or heavy. Children no longer cried. They observed in silence, learning how to brace when the ground shook or when the emergency lights blinked red. Reyes hated that most. How fast they had stopped being children. Dr. Mireille arrived 4 hours later, wrapped in thermocloak, hair wild and white, eyes sharp with old fire. She took one look at the shard and set up shop in the remains of the botanical research lab. The place still stank of mold and blood, but she didn't care. I've seen these syntax branches before, she said as she worked, fingers dancing over a mechanical keyboard salvaged from a museum wing. Not exact, but close. Recursive logic trees, fractal base sentence structures. It's not language in the way we think. It's intent written in code. Reyes leaned against the wall, watching the flicker of holograms bloom and dissolve. Can you translate? Not entirely, but I can feel the shape of it, like recognizing a storm by its pressure. And they're not just invading, they're sampling, testing. Every strike, every drone, they're not random. They're probing reactions, resistance thresholds, psychological limits. We're a live subject. Reyes exhaled slowly. A lab rat. A particularly dangerous one, apparently. They didn't expect resistance at this level. Not this fast. Something about it surprised them. He remembered the way the anvil hovered. Never firing unless provoked, never chasing retreating targets. It was too clean, too surgical. He'd seen slaughter before. This was dissection. Mireille tapped the sequence and brought up a pattern, an expanding spiral of data points. This isn't just a conquest algorithm. It's an assessment array. They're ranking us. They're watching to decide if we're worth exterminating or enslaving. Reyes didn't speak. He didn't need to. 3 levels above, in the armory they converted from a storage chamber, a group of survivors were assembling something old. The Thresher, a railgun platform once mothballed after the Martian treaties. Reyes had ordered its resurrection. If the anvil wanted data, he'd feed it steel. That night, Titan's crust trembled as they fired the Thresher. The slug was a solid bar of tungsten, launched at hypersonic velocity. It punched through the atmosphere in under 3 seconds and struck one of the alien landers just as it was deploying another cluster of drones. The explosion lit the clouds from beneath, casting long shadows over the ice. From orbit, the anvil responded, not with destruction, but with silence. The drones retreated. No new ships landed. For the first time in days, nothing moved. The colony waited, breath caught in collective lungs. Reyes paced between sectors, speaking little, listening more. People whispered now, the kind of whispers that carried hope's shape, but not its weight. A miracle, a turning point. Maybe the enemy had given up. He knew better. Dr. Mireille called him 2 days later, eyes wide with revelation. I broke a deep layer. The decision lattice. It's adaptive. It isn't command and control. It's consensus, a shared mind. They're a hive? No, more complicated. They argue, evaluate, debate. Every action we take feeds their internal war council. That shot, the Thresher, it made them pause because it forced disagreement. Some of them don't think we should be destroyed. Reyes froze. What are the others waiting for? For proof that we can't be contained. In the hours that followed, he pulled together every leader, every technician, every strategist with breath left in them. No one slept. They built, reinforced, prepared. If the next strike came, it would be the deciding one. Either they'd survive and change the enemy's mind, or they'd die proving they were never meant to stand in judgment. The anvil shifted on the 8th day. Its geometry changed, opened. Through the broken lens of satellite they'd barely managed to reactivate. Reyes watched as a structure emerged from the anvil's side. Long, slow, deliberate. It wasn't a weapon. It was a gateway. Mireille confirmed it with a whisper. They're sending something else now. Not machines. Not drones. Reyes didn't blink. Then we meet it. Armed. No, but not unready. He walked toward the airlock in silence, past faces lit by static screens and flickering lights. They didn't stop him. They didn't question. He was the only one who could do this. Not because he was a diplomat or a soldier, but because he'd already accepted what this was. Not a war. A test. The door opened to Titan's blighted surface. Wind howled through the shattered dome. And in the distance, descending like a thought-made flesh, a figure walked from the light of the anvil's breach. It was tall, unarmed. Its skin shimmered in ways the eye could not follow. It moved slowly, deliberately, as though gravity was still a new concept. Reyes stepped forward, heart steady. He didn't raise his weapon. The figure stopped, watching him. Between them, the storm quieted, and then it spoke, not in sound, but in mirrored thought. You are not what we expected. Reyes nodded once. Neither are you. The voice inside Reyes's mind was both alien and intimately familiar, like remembering a song from a dream. It conveyed no accent, no inflection, only understanding that unfolded in layers. Concept, intention, nuance. He didn't know how he comprehended it, only that he did, and that it was watching every flicker of reaction across his face with analytical calm. You are singular, the being said, not a question, a judgment. Reyes took a slow breath, Titan's icy air turning brittle in his lungs. Not quite, just the first one to step forward. The being tilted its head. Its shape was vaguely humanoid, perhaps intentionally so, but constantly shifting, the lines of its form refracting light like water disturbed by wind. It radiated no heat, no sound, yet the pressure of its presence was immense. Behind it, the anvil's breach shimmered with dimensional static. Something vast waited behind that doorway. Something watching. We do not value defiance for its own sake, it said. Resistance implies misunderstanding. You are meant to submit, be measured, preserved. We're not good at submission, Reyes said, stepping closer. But we're excellent at surviving. A pause. Survival is not advancement. He shrugged. It's a start. The being circled him now, not with feet, but motion, a kind of movement that felt like orbit more than walk. He could sense it scanning, weighing memory, experience, scars both physical and deeper. You faced extinction before. Repeatedly. Reyes didn't answer. It wasn't a question. It left imprints in your species' logic. The will to adapt through trauma, to weaponize suffering. Still, he said nothing. The silence became his own form of interrogation. The being stopped. This is not conquest. It is calibration. Your kind was inconsistent with our projections. You mean we didn't roll over? Reyes said. You rewrote yourselves. He felt a strange chill that had nothing to do with Titan's air. You learned faster than expected. You built weapons from tools, leaders from rubble. You sacrificed the obsolete to preserve potential. Your kind turns ruin into ritual. He narrowed his eyes. Are you impressed or afraid? The light around the being dimmed slightly. Uncertain. Behind Reyes, through his comlink, voices murmured. Mirai's team had detected additional movement. Not military, not overt. Probes, drones, biological echoes. The anvil had opened more than a gate. It was letting them see. Or maybe letting them be seen. You were testing us, Reyes said. But this was never about winning a war. You wanted to know what kind of threat we become. The being didn't deny it. We record all life encountered. Categorize, archive, neutralize where necessary. But your species disrupts pattern. You do not scale predictably. Your logic isn't evolutionary. It's reactive, chaotic, recursive. Reyes stepped forward, heart steady. So what now? Do you kill us because we're inconvenient? No, it said. A pause. Then, like the flicker of a deeper signal, we debate. For a moment, the air itself shimmered with pressure, like thought-made wind. The anvil pulsed behind the being, rhythms alternating, dissonant frequencies converging. Others were speaking now, through it, beyond it. He couldn't hear their voices, but he could feel the weight of a civilization negotiating in real time. "We are many," the being said, almost gently, "and not all agree." Reyes blinked slowly. "So some of you want to leave us alone. Some want to learn. And the others?" The being's form wavered, less humanoid now, more truth than mask. "They believe in preemption." A flash of memory hit Reyes. Artemis Prime's final broadcast. A dying child pulling a trigger. An old man laughing at a drone as it exploded. Not strategic brilliance. Just raw, human defiance. He realized then why the enemy hesitated. Humanity had failed to die on schedule. Reyes looked up into the creature's gaze, or where he imagined its gaze would be. "If you're looking for a single answer, you won't find it. We're not one thing. We never were." The being regarded him for a moment longer. Then it turned away and began to walk back toward the breach. Reyes felt something twist in his gut. "Is that it? For now? Then tell your council this." He took a step forward. "We don't want war, but we won't run. And if you come again, we'll adapt faster than you expect." The being paused at the edge of the rift. "That is what they fear." With sound like folding space, it vanished into light. The breach closed. Silence. Reyes stood alone beneath the stars, heart thudding in a rhythm older than civilization. Behind him, Mirai's voice came through the calm, quiet, shaking, yet laced with wonder. "The anvil's withdrawing. They're pulling the remaining scouts. No new landings. We think they're leaving." He exhaled. "Not leaving? Then what?" He looked up, watching the sky. "They're watching." And humanity, bruised and broken as it was, would need to decide what came next. Not peace. Not yet. But time. Time to prepare. Time to choose what they'd become before the stars came calling again.